Hello, my name is David Jalali, and I am the author of the book Terrorism, the Truth, available on Amazon. By education, I'm a graduate of Cal State Long Beach. I have studied engineering. I'm licensed professional engineer, and I have post graduate studies in business administration and law. But I retired basically from my self-employed business about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And after 2011, as I've said previously, I decided to do a little bit more reading and research on the issue of terrorism as it threatens our safety wherever we live in the world. Terrorism is defined generally as use of violence for political aim. I mean, that is basically the common uh, definition of terrorism. Now, the reason I'm making these video talks is to basically inform the audience of the result of the research that I have done in terrorism within the past 20 years. And my video talks are for people who are seeking peace and prosperity and coexisting in a peaceful world. Is not for the people who are seeking violence as an alternative. So my intentions are to promote peace and coexisting among all the people in the world, and especially in the United States where I live. Now, when we talk about a country like, for example, America, has we gotta consider the fact that every country has three parts. One part is geographical characteristic, and one part is the people, and one part is the government. So basically, when we refer to a country like America, is basically we are talking about the government, because America is a beautiful country, and I like living in America, and I've lived here since I was a teenager. School and in California, and basically went to school, graduate, and worked in California mostly since I was a teenager. Now, and I like California as a place that I live to, and I think it's a beautiful state. And I've traveled most of the United States since I was in college, camps, and with friends, and throughout my adulthood. And I found that America is a beautiful land too. Very people I traveled the world too, and American people are very generous and welcoming. I've noticed this when I travel different places of the world, and still I believe America is the best as far as the country and the people go. And but the government, as I did more research, I cannot say the same thing actually. So the reason I'm making these video talks is to share my knowledge, because I believe, as Shakespeare well said, uh, ignorance is dark, meaning that in a dark room, if there is not enough light, it could cause danger, could fall down and break a leg or something. And then that's why I think ignorance is dark. I agree with Shakespeare, and I also agree agree with Einstein, who says we cannot keep peace by force. Peace is achieved by understanding. So my intentions are to create understanding of the difficulties and threats to human all over the world and also in United States, and also um, solutions how we can overcome this threat. Now, excuse me. Now, to do that, first we need to go to the root of the problem, root of the terrorism. Basically, root of terrorism, as we said, since terrorism is violence for political game, consists of wars, occupation, invasion, coup d'etat, and everything that United States government have been doing. I'm just talking about past 100 years since World War II, which is over 70 years. So with everything that the American government has been involved in since World War II, in particular, before that too, but it's got more extensive since World War II. Look at every war we see, like Vietnam, major war, Vietnam, Korea, Grenada, Panama, Middle East wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, all of these, and even in Africa, Libya, Northern Africa, maybe Sudan, Egypt. You see, United States has been a party to these wars. So it creates terrorism, these wars, because these wars are for political aim and are against ordinary people get hurt because some of these countries do not even have a regular army. It's already been destroyed and they're basically fighting against the civilian. I mean, this is a true definition of terrorism. So, and the other part is when you government like CIA or Central Intelligence Agency or supports a coup d'etat or it supports a dictatorship like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and those countries, that is supporting terrorism too, because when dictators in power, like in Saudi Arabia, for example, MBS, he calls journalists who criticize the government into the embassy in Turkey, and they chop him up at the order of the king of Saudi Arabia, and then bury him around town so nobody can find him, or he sends a hit squad like a mafia to eliminate his critics or opponents, like in Canada recently. Al Jabri name and Khashoggi was the name of the journalist that was butchered in Saudi's embassy. And United States support this type of government tyranny, so that means support the terrorism or supporting racism. Racism creates terrorism because when you discriminate against people, they may resort to violence or their rights are being violated and they are not they have been deprived, and some people may resort to violence, try to overcome that, or to implement that racism. Also, force is used. Therefore, that is terrorism, supported terrorism too. And America, basically, if you read the history, already full of racism. Up to 1960s, people couldn't even part of the population was segregated to ride back at the bus or go to different school. Even right now, we see riots and demonstrations over the United States because of discrimination, a lot of it, and a lot of poverty. And this, the reason I say discrimination now too, you see that look at the cross section of the jail, for example, in the United States. I want to give you statistics, and then you can conclude um, uh, for yourself. Like, look at the jail cross section, people who are incarcerated or imprisoned. Like, there are like 11% African Americans live in United States, but at one point there were like 39% of the jail were African Americans. Right now, I've reviewed and recent data is about 13-14%, meaning that if 11% of population, United States population are blacks, but the jails are 14% black. You see, And then whereas like 70% of the population in America are white, only 34% of the jail is white. You see, the population in the jail of blacks are higher percentage than their population of the country, whereas the population in jail of the whites is almost half of the percentage of population in the country. And the same is true about the Hispanic, basically Latin. Latinos make up about 16, 17% of the population of United States. In jails are about 20%, and some estimate 27%. You see, the imparity doesn't mean, why do the more minorities are in jail is because mostly because they didn't have the same opportunities as whites in this country. See, that creates, so the racism creates violence, as we see, because there are more minorities in jail. So that's kind of terrorism too, and that's for political aim. They put them in jail so they can control their population, and discrimination is the jail, and especially if it's used to create a one religion countries. For example, like Israel is only a Jewish state. America supports that with all power in the Middle East. One religion state discriminating against apartheid regime, discriminating against its population of other races and other religions, like those Palestinians. They're Christians, they're Muslims, they may be atheists, but this one Jewish state. The ones who are proved to be Jews, they get free land, free money, by demolishing the homes of the natives, which are a different religion. Now, personally, I when I wrote my book, or when I read these issues, try to bring it to my part, exercise my First Amendment to try to improve the life of others by giving everybody knowledge, information which is not covered by mainstream media. I do it within the framework of my belief that I believe people are equal regardless of race, religion, color. So I do not have any preference as far as the race or religion of anybody. I believe people are equal. They're all good people around the world. They are just different. But it doesn't mean that we have to discriminate against the people even in United States or outside United States because they are different, whether in religion, whether in color, whether in race, whether in. So I believe in America's Constitution, and I believe it's the best there is because its amendments later, or civil right, I would say civil laws that passed later, an amendment to the constitutions, combination of all the laws are there, but whether they are implemented, that is a different story. Not, I don't think it's consistently the laws of the United States are being enforced like laws of discrimination. If it was, we wouldn't have so much disparity between the minorities and the majority. Basically, you see that there are much more poverty in the black communities and Hispanics than there are in whites. It's not that you can't say because they are just born that way. Is a lot of it has to do because if you read the history of United States, these basically blacks, they were slaves for 400 years. They were basically even segregated or discriminated up to 1960s. Even now, some, maybe a few of them come up, but majority of them are deprived, and maybe a few are selected and boosted up, bring up to, and send them back to the communities to oppress the other ones to just benefit a few. And that is wrong. That is discrimination. So despite of my love for America, basically the people and the country, the government, and discrimination is a discriminative government, discriminates against various people through different avenues, whether directly or indirectly, and it causes terrorism. Now, having said that, um, So basically, the causes of terrorism are wars, invasion, occupation, support of dictatorship, as we said, and also the discrimination, the racism, which is supporting one religion country in the name of democracy and human rights and freedom, which turn out to be just a face cover for the atrocities or satanic. Evil actions which are done indeed to basically uh, uh, topple democratically elected governments around the world and replace them with puppet dictators such as maybe Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain. You see in Jordan, Egypt, 2015, the CIA conducted another coup d'etat and put help the military and a general came to the power in Egypt, and the guy who won the vote of 80%, maybe over 70% of the Egyptians, they was put in jail and finally killed recently. And United States gives one like couple of $1 billion a year aid to Egypt in terms of arms to the generals to oppress those people. See what happens when this goes on. Some people may say we don't care because we can do it, but the problem is that it will make us insecure too. You remember back in 2001, I mean, Bin Laden and his crew, they conducted the 9/11, if that is the way. But those Bin Laden were Taliban in Afghanistan. The reason the United States invaded Afghanistan 2001, those people were trained by United States back in 1980s. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, these were trained by with the help of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and United States CIA trained the Taliban to fight the Soviets. But when the Taliban was able to finally evict the Soviets from Afghanistan, then turned back and asked United States now to leave Afghanistan. But I guess then Bin Laden was the same way. He was trained by CIA as part of the Taliban's to fight. But they were Arabs and they were Afghans. They were trained, I mean, Pakistanis, I mean, and they were trained to fight Soviets to force them leave Afghanistan. So Soviets left, and then Taliban, I guess, Bin Laden, and they turned over to U.S., asked U.S. to leave Saudi Arabia and those regions, but lift their support for the dictatorship, and it was not done. So that was my research shows, and that was the claim of Bin Laden and the group for doing the 2001 9/11, which was a terrorist act. And that was see, terrorism creates terrorism. But if in order to solve terrorism, we have to go to the roots of terrorism, see what actions, what kind of conduct causes terrorism, and what we can do to stop terrorism to make the world the safest place for all of us. See, that's what my research is. I did on my own time. As I said, I had time. I studied for 20 years and wrote the book Terrorism, the Truth on Amazon.com, which is available. But a lot of this, and I still do research, and I decided to put these videos because people can listen. Some people don't like to read, so hopefully they listen. And I do my part to make the world a safer place for all of us, make America safer, and make our home safer, so we don't be subject to harassment or terrorism or feel insecure for ourselves, for our kids, for our family. So that's the reason that I am talking about this. And I give you the solution. Now we found out, now we explained, I have done this before. I know I have defined terrorism. I said what causes terrorism, but we always have to do that a little bit in order to bring that up. And maybe other issues come up as I talk about. These are well discussed in my book. Now I'm going to give you the solution too, but first give you a couple examples. Look at in Yemen, for example, in the Western. We're going to just look at Western Asia. Look at in Yemen, Saudis, the Yemenis. There is a civil war, but there those people who are fighting civil war, majority of them want to have election, want to elect their own government. But Saudi Arabia, which is a puppet dictator of United States, supported by United States, armed like 50, $60 billion a year, arm is sold to Saudi Arabia with a dictatorship. They never had election. They cut people. They're the same as ISIS, basically. ISIS ideology is Wahhabism. This is what I researched, and it derives from Saudi Arabia and basically beefed up by Taliban, maybe in Pakistan. But see, they're both allies, are allies. United States allies are in the war against terror, and the United States allies. So they are bombing with $1 million bombs on Yemenis, and Yemenis are so poor. If you look at the study, research Yemen, they're so poor, they don't have nothing. They're just being bombed, their hospitals bombed, their weddings are bombed, and people are being killed because those people are fighting for their own freedom to be able to choose their own leaders, like people in the United States does. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work out because U.S. These our representative and mostly congressmen and senators and even presidents are psychopaths. They are crooks too. But at least people have a good feeling. They go to vote and they have a freedom to choose which crook to rule. But they don't even have that choice to choose who to rule them. It has to be dictated by Saudi Arabia from outside, and they're fighting that. And that's the basically a fight in Yemen. Now, if they let the Yemenis choose, elect their own government, the war stops. So who is causing terrorism now? United States supports Saudi Arabia and maybe Egypt and UAE, which none of them had an election in their life. I mean, there are a bunch of dictators and coup d'etat type government supports them, gives them arms to fight people who want to have freedom, choose their own leaders. But mainstream media doesn't say that. If you have to go research it, you find out whether I'm telling you the truth. So terrorism is created this way. Whereas the solution is democracy, real democracy. People elect their own leaders, and this war stops. If they stop fighting, if they let them choose their own leader. But America doesn't want to have election there. For example, in Syria, the same way. Syrians, America supports those rebels. They call them rebels, but they're basically from fanatics from Saudi Arabia hired, drug dealers from South America, Central America, they're hired by the money, Gulf money, by the oil money, and then sent there by CIA, trained to, they call them freedom fighter. But these are terrorists. They kill civilians because in Syria, the Syrian government is recognized by United Nations as a legitimate government of the Syria. They said the government would have to go, and then those minorities supported from outside US and Saudi Arabia and UAE and these dictators, those people run the country of Syria. So they support. And then the current president, who is Bashar Assad, he cannot even participate in election. Even the current government of Syria says, fine, they want to run for government, that's okay. Anybody inside the country can give representative, and the current president Bashar Assad will run too. All of them run and let people vote. They know by day I know. So United States, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they know that if Bashar Assad runs, he's popular, he's going to be elected. They say no, he cannot run for election. Only the people that the outside government, not the Syrians, choose, but the outside, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, United States, choose who runs for election in Syria, or to be even an election. You see how that goes? Now, it doesn't make sense. If you look into this, that's basically what's happening. Now, this caused terrorism because some people, not everybody is going to take it laying down. Some people, they believe in freedom, they believe in choosing their own leaders, and they are fighting for it. So we have civil war in Syria. We have the same thing in Lebanon. They had a government 6 months ago elected. It doesn't have to, but the government who was supported by West, by Saudi Arabia, by UAE, by United States, the previous government of Lebanon, that previous government had stored 240 tons of nitrate confiscated from somebody in a custom on a port, and that blow up And you can guess who blew it up, the people who benefited from them. They blew it up and they started blaming the government. It didn't have anything to do with it. It just came 6 months ago in power because this government was elected by the consensus of all the Lebanese. Now, United States, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they elect a portion of the minority group in Lebanon and give them arms and promote terrorism and use the mainstream media to promote violence, their chaos, so bring this minority in power. You see, whenever if in a country, in any country, in order to be successful and have democracy, it should be elections. And the election, usually the majority of people will vote and their candidate wins. That candidate of the majority doesn't need violence. They can rule by elections. But the only time an outside government interference of outside government is needed is when the minority wants to come to the and then rules over the majority. Then they need force. Election will not work. Election and democracy work for the majority to rule. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Because in a country like United States, majority of United States are white people and they are Christian. So you see the candidates are mostly majority are white and the candidate, the election, they are Christian too, in a sense. I'm saying that uh, that is a democracy people, whether the guy is crook or not. Most of them are crooks and criminals anyway, but still people have a choice and select between bad and worse. A majority usually elects the one that's less bad, and that is their own candidate. They have a choice, the majority. Nobody from, see, America, basically past few years, you see on mainstream media, everybody complaining about Russian interference in American elections. Now, how did the Russians interference? They have a channel, one channel here, RT.com, that is internet news channel. They said through that influences the elections, or through their English channel, RT, or any other country who interferes in America. And America is the American Congress, the government spending millions and billions of dollars trying to fight even influence of our English channel. Whereas United States, with the help of its puppet dictators like Saudi, UAE's money, and United States armed forces, they invade like Syria, they bomb Yemen, and they say we have the right to do that and we want to change the government there by force. But no other country has even the right to have an English channel to try to influence our election. You see, don't you think that's selfish? Is that Christian? Didn't Jesus says hypocrite only blames other for the same crime? Didn't Jesus said do unto others as you expect them to unto you? So I don't believe the government of the United States is even Christian. It acts like a Christian. If they believe, they would not. If they object, if the United States or people or government we object to Russians to some country to have an English channel of propaganda try to influence our elections, then why, as a Christian, American government would have or anybody would have the right to invade other countries or bomb them or interfere in their election, not only through English channel, because America has hundreds of channels. Hollywood is watched all over the world. It's the biggest propaganda channel for the United States. Not only that, or other English channel like the Voice of America or BBC and stuff, but also physically interfere with militarily topple democratic elected governments, put a dictator in the power, and then support them if the dictator needs help. They go with the arm against him to kill any dissent, anybody who disagrees, not to have election, just have a puppet government. See, that creates terrorism. Why does it create terrorism? Now, let me give you an example. You see, United States involved in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Yemen. Look at them. They are fighting free elections there, democratic elected government. But those people who are fighting this are because they occupy their country. If you occupy somebody's country, that country is not independent anymore. You cannot have independent election. It's under occupation, like Palestine is. Now, solution to all of these uh, is democracy, which I'm going to get to it later. But I'm going to give you another example. For example, you see this goes on. This may go on. United States we may be successful in some countries to be able temporarily, like Saudi Arabia, keep a dictator in power for a while. That's what happened in Iran. For example, because right now a lot of problem between Iran and United States because Iranians they had a revolution in 1905, constitutional revolution, to have a government like UK, a monarch, constitutional monarchy. Monarch only is symbol. Government is elected by the parliament, which is elected by the people. Prime minister runs the country. Prime minister that's elected by the parliament that's elected by the people. So this democracy, and they run the government. But United States supported the Shah. I mean, back in 1905, UK committed a coup d'etat in Iran and then replaced the king, the monarch, constitutional monarchy, with the absolute monarchy, a king which will go to parliaments and beat anybody up who talked oppose him. And then back in 1940s, when it was overthrown, and then the Allies, United States, UK, they put his son in power, and which Iranians they basically elected parliament and then elected the prime minister, Dr. Mossadegh, who was then uh, uh, overthrown by CIA in 1953, and then Iranians, the revolution for 25 years with a dictatorship who tortured people, who killed people like Saudi Arabia and buy arms from the United States, but it oppressed his own people, and no freedom to criticize, no freedom to have any elections, nothing until revolution happened in 1979. And from 79 on, the Iranians have had many elections, and they have thousands of universities. Their country has advanced quite a bit, but United States is fighting it to keep it down, country prevented from advancing because it is a threat to the kind of foreign policy of aggression, wars, invasion, occupation, and installing puppet dictator government, basically promoting chaos to create terrorism, to basically deprive those people from the freedom to have democracy and choose. And all of these on the false claim of democracy, human rights, and freedom. Now you can research all of these. Noam Chomsky is a good one to listen to, or Stephen Kinzer has a book, All the Shaw's Men, by Stephen Kinzer, which tells you about that. Chomsky has a book he wrote in 1988. It's called Manufacturing Consent. If you read that from Chomsky, he says basically what we see in mainstream media, democracy, human rights, we're going to go there for freedom. These are all lies. These are all lies to fool the fools. Otherwise, those countries, the best thing for a country to have a democracy, best chances for the foreign troops to evacuate that country. Then the countries will get together, and then they have different forces would confront each other, and they basically have to, because none of them is being supported from outside, they come together to elect present their representatives, and then elect their representatives, have a constitution, have an elected government, have a democracy like United States. But the United States government, because its power, the United States has a might, is using it in a destructive way, which is going to eventually is made our life insecure inside United States, and it's going to make it work and making the country go broke, America. So what I'm saying here, I'm laying the facts. I know it may be harsh, it may be hard for some people to swallow this, but if you study it, you'll come to the same conclusion. The might and the power and the money of United States of America, which can be used for the good sake of good, to improve, to make the world a better place for everybody to live, to make the world a more prosperous place, free of atrocity and killing, is actually making the world a very unsafe place, trying to protect our security, which is not going to happen. If the world is unsafe around us, it's a matter of time till it's going to spill over into us, as we saw in 2001, 9/11, and other terrorist acts you see in United States happening, to places go blow up, people shooting, all of this. Some of these, they are not really as a result of doing good. Some of them, people have a lot of reasons around the world to commit this kind of terrorist acts. And we give them that reason by our conduct, by greed to go get cheaper oil by putting a dictator in power and maybe enslaving those people. Because America was built on slavery, as you know. Read the history. Truman says as well, Harry Truman says, if you want to know the future, go read the history. See, if you want to hire somebody, you want to lend somebody loan, bank checks their credit. Now let's check the credit of America. America, all we see is but throughout the history, there have been some good. I'm not saying bad. I mean, there are good things. We have some good laws on the book, but whether that laws are implemented equally regarding everybody, that is for debate. You see, now like Iranians right now, there are animosity between Iran and the United States. Actually, Iranians do not hate United States. Actually, they are one of the only populations country in the Middle East who basically like Americans more than anybody else. If you go into Arab countries around Iran or in Afghanistan, Iraq, they don't like United States because they think United States destroyed their country. But since United States have been outside Iran for the past 40 years, and the government, under the sanctions, the United States sanction, cruel sanctions, which even doesn't let them sell their oil or don't bring food or medicine into country. But they are happier that way because they have been able to go to university. The country has advanced, it has a space program, it has atomic program, it reaches uranium, it has thousands of schools. Whereas 40 years ago, before the revolution, didn't have enough, even 10 universities. Now they have 4,000. There are millions of college graduates, doctors, engineers. I was reading about that before the revolution back in 1979. Iran was selling the Shah, the dictator was like MBS, Ben Salman of Saudi. Shah of Iran was selling 7 million barrels of oil per day back in 1978, 79, right 1 year before the revolution. 7 million barrels oil per day was being sold by Iranian government back then at $35 a gallon, which equals to $350 today. So basically, Iran was selling 7 million barrels of oil per day, and at $350 of today money, and only had 30 million population, and didn't have enough universities, no housing. A couple of cities maybe were built up, but the remote areas didn't have water, gas, electricity, nothing. No university, no education. 85% of people couldn't read and write. But after the revolution, and 46% of the people back then live under poverty in Iran, with all the wealth. All the wealth was going either to the Shah or buying arms, and spent wasted on the country, being ripped off. Now, back after 40 years, back in 2011, like 9 years ago, I was reviewing the data. The poverty in Iran, under poverty, were 11%, which is less than prior to revolution. And the universities, there are 4,000, there are 4 million graduate colleges out of the 85 million population. And the Iran has never been able to sell since revolution up to the past 4 years more than a couple of million, 1 million barrel of oil. Lucky, and they had to do it in hiding because of the sanctions. US didn't want to let was preventing everybody from buying Iranian oil. But they build a country like that just because they have freedom to choose. And they have had multiple elections. Everybody in the government in Iran is elected, from the leader, who is elected by the Guardian Council or by the experts, expert council of experts who are 12 members elected by the people, and they elect one leader to be for leader of the country, and they have a president who is elected, parliament elected, ministers, basically parliamentary ministers elected by people, and the United States fighting the government, trying to choke it to bring the Shah back, a dictator like Saudi Arabia, to become a client state of America by the arms, and like Saudi Arabia, and promote terror in that region. That's basically what it's doing. Now you can go ahead and read that book from Stephen Kinzer, Noam Chomsky, and see if that's true, or research yourself the data. What they say Iranian is a terrorist government, but they are victim. I don't think they are terrorist government. See, they are the one. United States has over 50 militaries around surrounding Iran with two navies, a fifth fleet in Persian Gulf, and harassing Iranian around the country. I mean, you don't see Iranians have any military base around this country, or even Russians or even Chinese. But United States had military base around China, around Russia, threatening them at their border, and then blaming them. Uh, like that is part of the United States. See, borders of the United States are Canada, Mexico, Atlantic Ocean, and Pacific Ocean. What are United States troops doing in China Sea or in Persian Gulf or in Ukraine, threatening those countries and then blaming for their opposing it, they're fighting that threat. See, this is terrorism. That you using violence, threatening other nations. This is the real terrorism. Not those countries who are fighting it. They're victims. Like United States, we go into Lebanon, land troops, and the Lebanese, whatever religion they have, they're Lebanese. If the Lebanese start fighting with these troops, then they call the Lebanese as a terrorist. And these troops, but where in the world, what kind of mentality, what kind of uh, justification is for occupying another sovereign nation, and if they fight you, you call them terrorists? See, this comes from the mentality of slave mastering, because this country was, when the country was occupied, continent of United States, there were uh, over 140 million Indians, natives live in this country. Today, after 500 years, there are only 5 million left. So, and then when this country was discovered, the continent of United States and even Northern America, then the occupiers, they went and they enslaved the blacks out of Africa, brought here to enslave them, cheap labor to build the country. And then from then, when they get power, they started invading countries and killing. You see, the history of United States government is is uh, is a killer. Occupier is a warmonger. Slave master, well, works when you say slave master. When you say warmonger, United States government comes to your mind. When you say terrorist, because uses violence for a political aim, then again, United States government comes to your mind. So every woman and baby killer, I mean, a one-ton bomb on peasants, on weddings in Afghanistan, in Yemen, killing in hospitals, killing people. There are women and kids there. Woman and baby killer, United States government comes to power. Racist, because it supports one religion state, Israel, to if you are a Jew, you can prove that you're Jew. They go demolish. United States give arms to the occupiers of the land to go demolish a native's home, whoever it is, maybe Palestinian, but whoever lived there, Palestinian, whether he's Christian, Muslim, or whoever, who has been living in that land for thousands of years. His or her home is being demolished, and somebody who can prove he's a Jew from Russia or around the world is brought and put in his place. And if they fight for their home, they call terrorists. And this and United States said this is just. This is for political aim. Two reasons. One is because Christianity, James, I guess in a Bible, somebody Bible written that this land of the sons of Israel. I mean, even according to Christian, according to this claim in Bible that God was a racist. He gave the Jews land, Zionist land, but they give them didn't give other people of the earth land, other religions. And then see, that's another proof that this is racism. And then gives them arms to those people who occupy those to kill the natives, like the occupiers of America did to the Native Americans. You see, this mentality is in the DNA. That is me. These, the reason now, this can go on if it is unchecked. It can go on if there is nobody is going to rise up and try to find it, to fight it, try to hurt us because this is the policy of our government. But if you read the history, atrocities does not go forever. Look at the histories. Look at Romans were in power, were empire. Persians were empire. The first empire in the world were Persians, but then there were Romans, and then in Greek, and now United States, English, UK was a big empire, and then but what when it came to when the atrocities become unbearable for those people, they reacted by fighting. Look at the Iranians now fighting. The Yemenis are fighting. The Syrians are fighting. The Iraqis are fighting, as the Lebanese. When these forces get the same technology and the same arms that America has been using to subdue those people, to get them, oppress them, they fight back. They'll be able to hurt us. Now, you see, look at North Korea has a missiles, atomic warhead that can reach New York or California. Iranians have atomic weapon and large missiles who can travel distance and a space program. And then other ones, Pakistan has it. So but, now, as these go on, those people are going to get united. Look at Cuba, Venezuela, Yemen, Iran, Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Lebanon, and then Russia, China. Now then Russia become all these become united. Nicaragua, these countries become united as they join forces. Now, United States is going to fight all of them. Now, do you think all with all that might and the force that they have, they can reach us here to hurt us? So our life become insecure. The world become unsafe for us. The reason I am spending my own time and try to get the word across that if we continue, meaning United States continue with this foreign policy of invading countries, of toppling democratic elected government and support a minority with guns to come in the power through dictatorship, fighting the free election, and those big people who are being subjected to oppression and deprived from election and deprived their democracy, freedom, and human right. Even so, United States claim that it's doing for that, but that's a lie. That is only to fool the fools. The reality on the ground is something else. It's actually United States actions are preventing democracy, human right, and freedom around the world. Examples I told you, look at Syria, Iran, look at the history of the toppling democratic elected government. Back in 73 was Chile. The government was toppled and a dictator was brought in power, General Pinochet, who killed hundreds of thousands of people. Look at in Egypt, 2015, General Sisi. He's a dictator. He cuts anybody's, they disappear if somebody criticizes him in there. And it's a military power. US gives them like $2 billion a year. Look at Saudi Arabia. The guy he butchers journalists with impunity. United States support him, gives them money. And he sends death squads around the world in Canada to kill his opposition. And United States supports. These are not all over the internet. You can research these. Now, some people, as I said, may say we don't care. We have the power. We do the. But you remember 2011, 2001, 9/11. Look at how many places have bombed in the United States, blow ups. Government maybe doesn't say all of them, but you can read them in the paper. I read them on the internet, on YouTube. These shootings, these Boston Marathon bomber. Look at all these bridges blown up, the train blown up. All of these. I don't know who does them, but whoever does them, it could be even American, but it could be grudges against the government, or it could be foreigners trying to do something to us. But eventually, if it gets more, as the atrocities overseas are being done more by United States government, then they get more reason to come back at us and creates makes America unsafe for us. And I don't want it. I love America. It's a beautiful country, as I said. I want to do what I can to keep peace and keep it safe. And I think the only way I can do it with keeping it safe by do my share as a citizen, put out a video and lay some facts. So people know maybe through their congressman or through the means, legal means, and peacefully by telling to everybody else, spread the word that we need to have peace around the world. We need to pull America. Now, the solution, I'm getting to that now. The solution is for America to pull the troops out of the countries that war zones. Do not support wars. Support free elections. Support democracy. In Yemen, pull back and tell all the groups that are fighting Yemenis through United Nations go in there. All of them come together, no matter what religion or what ethnic background they are, ethnicity, and what their beliefs are. They all get together and every group offers a representative. The representative get together and elect a person to rule or go for election. All those groups have elections, elect their representatives. They come together, write a constitution, put it to the vote of the people, and then elect a president or prime minister or whatever government they want, not from outside, dictate to them what to have. This war and terrorism will not end, would only get worse if United States does not change its policy of interventions in other countries to topple democratically elected governments to replace them with puppet dictators, as I mentioned so many examples for you. If this doesn't stop, this terrorism gets worse, and it has two folds. Not only terrorism gets worse to make us unsafe inside America, but also America goes broke. Look at, according to Trump, he's right. uh, Close to $8 trillion, $8,000 billion America is spending in the Middle East within the past 20 years. What have we gained? The whole Middle East is destroyed. Look at Libya, was the richest country before U.S. intervened during Clinton and Obama. They bombed Gaddafi. He was a dictatorship, but there was other ways to get could help people to elect, gather together and elect a government. There's no reason to go to bomb him and destroy the infrastructure of the country. Now Libya is the poorest country in the Africa. It was the richest country, now it turned to the poorest country. That is the foreign policy of the United States. Turn those countries into a hotbed, a, a, a place safe haven for terrorists to go there, and those terrorists terrorize those countries, and then those countries will they're gonna study, they're gonna know, those people know who is behind this. The Yemenis know who is bombing and where these bombs are made. The arms are from United States, and the same is true in Syria. They know who is bombing them. The United States goes and occupies a part of Syria which is oil rich and trying to sell the oil out. They know who's stealing their oil. Or in Iraq, who was stealing? These people, they live generations, continue. As they continue, this goes around, and the enemies become more and becomes unsafe here. Now the solution is to pull out of these wars, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and let those people elect their own governments in Lebanon and stuff. Do not support one religion states. Do not support discrimination and racism and apartheid regimes. South Africa up to 1980s, early 80s, it was only supported by two countries late at the end, United States and England. And that was apartheid. The whole world was saying apartheid is racist. Nobody was doing any business with South Africa. A lot of government, but United States was supporting it. See, the racism and the discrimination is in the DNA of the United States government. Maybe some people are still the descendants of the slave masters. Maybe in this country they still have power, they have money, and they support the government. But I believe majority of United States people, Americans, whether white, black, or red, majority of them, they are not racist. They do not they do not support wars, terrorism, an invasion of other countries. But those majority in America, they don't have the money. Most of the money and the power is in the hands of the 1%. They buy the vote in a sense by manufacturing consent. Read the book by Chomsky. By getting the media and Hollywood do not cover what I just told you. The media and Hollywood they give you fake news. Trump is right, they're fake news, but he put fake news both ways. Trump himself is a fake too. But that part is a fake news is right because a lot of them they don't look at the world news. You watch world news for 30 minutes, like ABC or BBC. I mean, they talk about anything else except world news. I mean, this is not supposed to be news. And the news is a show business. It's not really news. All over the world, like thousands of people a day, millions probably get killed all over the world by United States bombs and killing and wars that United States supporting on one end. But you don't hear a single word on the news media. You hear that a dog falls into a ditch, helicopter comes. This is a show business. That is, oh, we care for somebody. How do we not, if somebody doesn't care about human, how can he care for animal? You do, you know what I'm saying? Because if they care, if the news and the Hollywood cared about human, they would show the bombings in Yemen. How many people are being killed every day in Yemen by Saudis, by dictators? How many Saudis, how many heads they chop in Saudi Arabia for criticizing the king with a sword like ISIS? Or cover the death squad that the King of Saudi Arabia sends to assassinate a dissident, somebody who is opposed to the or critics of the government. Or the United States is stealing Syria's oil, selling it those people. Or in Iraq, for example, you know, or in Afghanistan, bomb a wedding, or in Lebanon, they blow up a fertilizer, confiscated fertilizer to just create a chaos in there, to basically topple the government and just when the country doesn't have a central government, thieves can go in there and steal better. Because imagine somebody come to your home to steal. If you and your family are not fighting, you're alert, you're going to confront the thief, you know, and deal with him. But if you are fighting among the family members in the house, busy fighting each other, the thieves can come and steal and go easily. See, because I personally, Christopher Columbus and stuff, there were pirates. They discovered America because those were not ordinary people 500 years ago without any GPS, doesn't hit the ocean, doesn't know where he's going. A lot of them, they came here, the Indians offered them food, survived, and they killed them. They took their lands from them. Then they brought the slaves, they built a country. Then become power, now they invade. It is in the DNA of America, I'm saying American government, is terrorism, is war mongering, it's a slave mastering, war mongering, woman and baby killing just to maximize profit, to make more money for a minority. Not even Americans, basically ordinary Americans, get killed in the process, or they get like a slave. I think slavery has changed only from 400, from 150 years, 300 years ago to now. Slavery, the method have changed. The method is finance. People are owe so much money, they have to work so much that they don't have time to think what the government is doing in their name. Unless when you get old like me and have time to go research and study it. So the government of the United States, in the names of American, is basically committing atrocities around the world, committing terrorism in the on the false pretext of human right, democracy, and freedom. I know these what I'm saying are very hard to swallow for some people. But I love America as much as everybody else, if not more. It's a beautiful country. I haven't been any other place, and I've been raised here. I've worked here, been in school here, and I've been, paying taxes, and I've been law obedient citizen, and studied. And then when I studied, these are the facts that I have discovered. And these facts, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to me, they know these facts existed, but nobody wants to say it because they want to be politically right, or they're afraid. I don't know why they don't, nobody want, but if we don't talk about these, they never go away. It's going to get worse and worse, and then every one of us going to be affected um, negatively, and our security will be jeopardized. We don't want that. We want to have peace, security, and prosperity for us, the kids, to be safe in America, people to be safe, and we won't be threatened from outside or from within. And the threat from outside or within, we don't give them justification or give them a reason, more reason to threaten us, to hurt, try to hurt us, uh, either outside United States or inside United States. But unfortunately, United States foreign policy does nothing but create more terrorism, more insecurity around the world, and unfortunately wasting all of our resources. Look at America is broke now. We have like $23 trillion. We were in debt when before Trump came. After Trump came up, it has gone up from $2 to $3 trillion more. It's gone up. The country is broke now. I mean, the budget is don't have enough budget. The economy is good. I mean, this virus, maybe this virus, I was reading a couple of articles, was developed in a lab funded by United States to do biological research. United States apparently has 7 or 8 of these laboratories around China, Russia, in the West Asia, in East Asia lab, these labs. And this lab, one lab, was funded by United States. Maybe this virus, there are people who said this virus was intentionally brought out to knock down China out of the world economy because China's economy is growing so fast, it surpassed United States in 2020 was to. But United States CIA maybe created this virus to slow down China's economy, but it backfired. Like everything else, like if you go into another country, United States commit supports a dictator, topple a democratic-elected government, and then put a puppet dictator there, like Iran did in 1953. Look at backfire. Right now, the relationship they are a threat for America, and there are many people in countries like that. They're a threat. That once they join, they're going to be a big force to deal with, and then unfortunately, that would be too late. I'm saying this to stop this. So maybe there are scenarios, there are theories out there that United States create this virus or coronavirus to slow down Chinese economy, but that the virus got out of hand, and then it came to United States to Europe. Uh, there's an old saying says, "Live by the sword, die by the sword." That is possibility. Think about it. So, but we need to stop that. America needs to stop interfering into internal affairs of other countries. You need to get out of these wars. America occupies over 150 countries with over 700 military bases. Why don't you ask those people of those countries, do a survey, see how many of these countries really approve of their country to be occupied by a foreign military? Most of them don't. And now, if they are quiet, that causes terrorism because if they cannot have the power to fight the might of the United States, they're going to resort to terrorism. So that promotes terrorism. You see what I'm saying? How can actions promote terrorism? To slow down terrorism, you got to go to the roots of terrorism. Roots of terrorism is no place in the world except in the United States foreign policy. If U.S. stops interfering into other countries, toppling democratic elected government, replace them with dictators, or support discrimination, racism. I mean, even in Israel, there is a democratic solution. Actually, Iranian leader suggested. I was reading on the internet one of the videos. He suggested in Israel to have a solution in Israel. Iran doesn't threaten Israel, doesn't threaten any country militarily. That's what the leader was saying. And the government of Iran has officially said. He says they have a democratic solution, but mainstream media doesn't tell you that, or American government doesn't let that get onto the public, because they say this will neutralize their policy of supporting terrorism, occupation, and ripping off those nations, those people, just for a minority of 1% in America, at the despair of the majority of Americans, safety and security of the Americans. But the solution that offered by Iranian officially by the government, I was doing research and you can research and find out that to have election in Israel, Palestinians, people who have lived there thousands of years before these Jews come from Russia, from America, from England, coming here. They have been there like 50, 60, 70 years they've come. But there are people who there have been living there for, they say 2,000 years, 3,000 years, their generation. Those people who live there, born there, but lived there thousands of years ago, the people who has been born in that country, in Israel or Palestine, whatever you call it, get together and they vote, they elect the type of government, they elect representative, they adopt a constitution, put it to vote, they vote a constitution, vote representative, vote the type of government, and vote for a president. Okay, and then treats everybody citizen of the country equally, doesn't just demolish the homes of the Muslims and the Christian Palestinian who lived there a thousand years, and just because somebody is a Jew, is a Zionist, is from America, UK, or Russia, comes over there, gives them the free land on the Mediterranean shore, and give them money to survive, whereas surrender, deprive the natives until they die or they leave, force them to leave. Even Carter, Jimmy Carter wrote a book. I suggest everybody should read that. I mean, he was president of the United States. He is alive. When he got old, I think he came to his senses. He wrote a book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. I suggest somebody read that book. He says Israelis, in order to force Palestinians out of those lands that they're born on, the farmers, they intentionally bring excuses to hold their trucks who's selling their farm products, carrying it to sell it outside the occupied territories. Israelis intentionally slow it down 2 3 days until the trucks stay at the border and the food or the farm products get rotten, get spoiled, and not going to be used. And the guy goes bankrupt, the native Palestinian. And then he is forced to sell his home, his land, they buy it from him cheap. See, this is what they do. This is the policy America supports in the name of democracy, human rights, and the name of supporting a religion verse of the Bible. I don't think Jesus, if he was alive, he wouldn't approve of this. Or a true Christian wouldn't approve this because Jesus says, do unto others as you expect them to do unto you. It doesn't say do unto others what you don't want it to be done to you. So I'm saying that these are not Christians really. They're using the religion for their pocket, for business, using the religion as a business. And those people who go occupy those lands, those Zionists, they are not Jews either. Because Jews also say, I have read the Torah, the Bible, and the other religions books. And the Torah says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Now you're telling me Israel loves its neighbors as it loves itself? It occupied part of Syria, Jordan. It occupied part of Lebanon. It occupied part of Egypt, part of Jordan. It occupied the Palestinian lands. And if the Iran revolution hadn't happened in 1979 to stop Israel, Israel probably would, his really goal and plans, if you study the article of their creation of the Zionism, they said the borders of Israel are in Indian Ocean. The Persian Gulf is part of Israel. The Arabia, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, all of those are part of Israel, greater Israel, the greater Middle East, the new Middle East that George Bush was talking about. This is what he's talking about. Now, somebody who has that in mind to occupy all those other countries, you think he loves his neighbors as he loves himself? See, these are not Jews and these are not Christians either, I believe. They are just using their religion for their pockets, for their profits, make money. At the end of the day, it's over a buck. Killing people, depriving people, enslaving people, a slave master, warmongering, killing women and babies, and committing terrorist act and committing racism just to make more profit, while Hollywood and mainstream media is manufacturing consent by lying that we are doing this for democracy, freedom, and human rights. Which country United States invaded and left, and even after left, it left a democracy and freedom and elected government? You can name any. If you know, let me know. I tell you whether it's right or wrong, and go research it. You find out for yourself. So we need to stop fooling Americans, the government of the United States. American. The reason I'm putting this, I'm using my First Amendment to lay some facts, and I'm willing to debate or discuss this on a public view, on any news channel, any place they want, with evidence, names, and see who's right. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I have studied. This is the conclusion I've got, and I told you the sources I have studied. Read the book by Noam Chomsky. I said Manufacture Consent. Read the book by Stephen Kinzer, All the Shaw's Men. Just a couple of them. Or read the book Plan of Attack by Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward, was was it Watergate, Nixon, that time, if you remember. Bob Woodward is a famous newsman. And he wrote the book Plan of Attack. He says when George Bush, the son, came to power back in 2000, Wesley Clark says that in his own interview, and Bob Woodward in the book Planet Attack says the same scenario too. Usually, I don't use one reference or one source when I study. I hear both sides of the story. Like if somebody goes to court and has a case, they listen to the case of the plaintiff and the defendant, to both of them before I make a decision. So I read both cases. Wesley Clark, in an interview back in early 2000, says that when George Bush came to power, Wesley Clark was NATO commander, chief, supreme commander of NATO. Wesley Clark is general. He went. He said, "I went to see one of my general friends in Pentagon. I went there and sat with him and said, 'How is everything?' And he suddenly pulled the drawer, opened up his drawer, and he took out a piece of paper. On that paper, he said there are 7 countries we plan to invade. And Wesley says, I asked him why. I was shocked. He says, because we can, but I don't know why. Because we can. And that was the plan of Cheney, Bush, and neocons, which are right now, Elliot Abrams is one of them. You know, Elliot Abrams is, you can do a search on Google and read about them. All these names that I say, you can easily search them online and study, see who they are. And then the 7 countries, and who were those countries? Sudan, Libya, Lebanon, maybe, Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Africa, Sudan. These are 7 countries, Somalia, 7 countries, and then Iran too. Iran was one of them too. There are 7. And all of them, they were invaded, occupied, destroyed. With the prize was Iran. Iran was the main one, but Iran is more powerful, played it very smart, and was able to save itself. But it was sanctioned cruelly, and then, but still be able to head back, and so far it has stopped the invasion. And all these 50 military bases around there was made by United States to prepare to invade Iran, but they haven't, because Iranians are atomic power. And believe me, they have atomic power. They have a lot more nuclear bases. I would do a lot of different researchers. You can find them. They have very extensive nuclear, and they have nuclear state. If they hit back when they are taking their last breath, all they do is use a nuclear bomb. It's better, and if they're gonna go with a bang, with a bomb, with a bang, as they say. There they are. We could read the history of Iranians. The Persian Empire was the biggest and longest empire in the man's history. So Iran, the United States tells Iran, you need to reduce your missiles, you need to eliminate your atomic program, reduce your missile range, and you need to get out of the Middle East. But United States, it doesn't He says that to the public to fool the public. But if you go research about Persian Empire, the map of Iran was from North China to North Africa, from Mediterranean to the Red Sea. That was Persian Empire. Means these Iranians that are living in Iran, they are relatives with those people. So how could you tell somebody, leave your relative, for example, in Iraq or Afghanistan or in Libya or in Lebanon, and don't go see him, don't interact with him. You have influence there because the lack of some people who are there, some of them know this, but they make that claim. United States make that claim against Iran. You know, it's not possible because those people are basically the same. They have thousands of years. They have inter families related. They have married into each other, and they have cousins in Iran, and they have cousins in Lebanon over there, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Egypt, and in Afghanistan, in Yemen. They are related economically, familially, and ethnicity. They have three. The three go expanded that geographic area for thousands of years ago. United States, if it says Iran has influence in the Middle East, it's a natural influence. So, but the United States knows that it's impossible. It's asking for impossible to create a justification for supporting terrorism and wars in those regions, so it can provide the weapons, so it can make money off of the sale of that. As long as there is war in the West Asia in those areas, then they have to buy weapons. A lot of them are clients of United States, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Egypt, Oman, Kuwait, um, uh, and Jordan and Israel. And they buy arms from United States, and they, as long as they fight among each other, they sell arms goes and the profits come. But at one point in time, this forgot, and the Iranians are making their own weapons. They don't buy anything, and they're producing atomic bomb, jets, or missiles, or a space program. As they become stronger, they give it to their cousins all over the place. They're going to be able to reach United States, and they're going to make us unsafe here. See, when the greed that the government is doing to make money for 1% is going to make us, the 99%, at risk in security. So what I'm saying here, first of all, is for security of myself, because I live in the United States, and for security for my countrymen and women, people who live around me. I interact with them every day, my neighbors, everybody. And I think the solution it would be to support democracy, election, and human rights, not by providing arms to the minorities or the demonstrators to shoot at the government to create terrorism. That's not going to make us any safer or prosperity, bring us prosperity for us. That's going to make us unsafe, make the world more dangerous. What's going to make us safe is we pull back our troops out of those countries who don't want our troops to be there, let them fight among themselves to have election. I bet you, as long as our troops leave, they're not going to fight among themselves. They're going to start voting, elect their representatives, and send their representatives to get together, write a constitution, president or kingdom, whatever the government they want. At least it's a government that is a consensus on of the people of that country, not influenced by a foreign power. Once the foreign power comes in there goes everything else by getting out of those countries. So if you can help me get this word around that we need to get out of the hot zones, areas that don't want us, to stop terrorism, to promote peace, and also not waste our resources. The valuable resources of this country, America, should be spent on healthcare, should be spent on education, should be spent on infrastructure, rather than spending to promote terrorism, wars, and killing around the world, maybe mostly in West Asia, to support racism or dictatorship to maximize profit for the 1%. That is not going to help us. It's not going to make us any secure, especially the 1% that makes billions of dollars. Imagine, I mean, Bezos, I guess I was reading someplace on the internet, one day he made like $13 billion profit. Now George Floyd is a citizen of America, whether black, white, whoever. I'm sure a lot of some white people like him get killed too. He gets killed for $20 in America. See, get $20, and the less than 1%, like Bezos and Trump and those his base, they make billions in one day. That's that's no sign of justice in America, you know. And those billions they make, they don't spend it on the country. They spend it on a space program to find another place. They know with the way these billionaires are abusing the earth and trying to profitize from the death and destruction and terrorism. In a few more years, maybe 50 years, 100, the earth will not be a place to live anymore. It won't be habitable. A lot of people will live in the earth, maybe get destroyed there. So they're trying to find a new place in space. So build their own colony, go over there with their money, and they build it up and nice so they can afford it. They're billionaires. They're making a space program better so they can jump in space and go there. And once the earth is blown up because of either pollution, toxic, or terrorism, or these wars. As you know, Einstein was asked what the Third World War would look like. Einstein said, I do not know about Third World War, but I can tell you, Fourth World War, people will have to fight with sticks. You see, so the billionaires who causing all this destruction and all this terrorism, all these wars and killing innocent people and support racism to maximize profit, make billions more. They're spending that billion to for a space program to find build to look for their future home because the way they know the way they're doing business is not helping anybody. It's only going to make the world unsafe and the earth uninhabitable. You see how that goes? The only people like you and I, what we can do, we can only talk and say the truth, and hopefully somebody listen and things change for the better, so we can be secure too, and we have a future too. Future is not dark for us because it greed is minority. If we can stop, so the solution is to stop these wars. United States stop supporting tyranny, stop supporting dictatorship, stop supporting wars, stop supporting racism, and invest the money inside America to improve education, health care, infrastructure. So make America's life better and safer and stronger, rather than getting to 1% billionaires to find a space, home in a space, and destroy where we live. Okay, I wish everybody the best, peace, and happiness. And I hope my word, as I said, my video talk, which is intended to promote peace, stability, and safety for all the people all over the world, especially in the United States, will serve its purpose and eliminates, hopefully to some extent, ignorance, which creates killing and terrorism. For the hope of peace all over the world, thank you very much, and guys, have a very nice day.